This is What's It Like with Dr. Ken Tangen.
Hi, this is Ken Tangen. My guest is Stacey Earl, the country folk singer. No. Do you get that at all?
Sometimes I get it. There was actually a pop singer for a while when I was growing up with my name. And at the time I became, quite popular.
Well, I think the singer has an extra E at the end of their last name. You have the silent and invisible E at the end of Earl.
Yes.
Actually, Stacey is a kinesiologist.
I am. My degree is actually in kinesiology, and then my main profession is personal training, and I have an emphasis with a specific type of technique that I use called muscle activation techniques.
MAT.
Yes.
Which is designed to help people with pain to have less pain.
Yes. It is designed, I wouldn't say that I necessarily go after pain, because pain can be a little bit of a hard thing to follow. It will let you chase it. It won't always let you reap any results if you're following it. So I try to follow the body's function, specifically what it can't do. So I look to correct the patterns of misuse, correct the compensations. The better I get the muscles to fire, the more that a person can strengthen, then they have no pain.
So how did you get interested in this? Did you watch Richard Simmons and Jane Fonda when you were a kid?
No, I watched them a little bit, I'm not going to lie. I've always liked using my body. Honestly, a really big driving force for me originally getting into personal training, not the injury work, was really watching my mom struggle with her weight and watching her do a lot of different fad diets. So it started with really paying attention to how a lot of people started to treat their bodies with their want to lose weight. And back then, personal training wasn't how it is now, where, there's a whole show devoted to personal training now and losing weight. So the more that I started to look into it, I looked at nursing, I looked at becoming a doctor, and then finally a friend, I grew up in Michigan, a friend had gone to Berkeley, and she was touting how great Berkeley was and what a great experience she had. And I told her about what I wanted to do. And she said, I think they have a degree in that. I said, really? And she had her book, and we opened it, and there was kinesiology. And so I pretty much made the plan to move out to California pretty quickly after that. Even though kinesiology is taught at many universities, I wanted a different experience. By the time I got out here, Cal stopped their program, so I ended up going to San Francisco State, focusing on exercise physiology there, and started personal training within a few years into doing my degree.
What was it like growing up in Michigan?
It was definitely a normal kind of suburban experience. I grew up right outside of Detroit. So I lived in a suburb, went to suburban school, took the bus to school, all of that. It was a good upbringing, but I was really looking to explore relationship with other cultures where the color of your skin wasn't such a big deal. And I really thought that there has to be people living in harmony. And I saw a lot of racial unrest there, and I really wanted to look for something different. And that's really what sparked me to move out of Michigan. And what better way to go into a melting pot than San Francisco?
How did your parents impact your worldview?
Well, my father died when I was young. So from that aspect, I don't have an impact from a father. My mom's impact of my worldview, she was a little bit more hesitant as a mom, a little bit more fearful in terms of me. She always told me I could do whatever I wanted to do and be whoever I wanted to be. Yet at the same time, she was a little bit fearful of me, kind of spreading my wings. But once I got out to California and she really realized that I was happy here, she was very happy for me.
How old were you when someone told you were pretty?
When I was pretty. Gosh. I would say probably kind of early on. I'm a very tall woman. I'm almost 6 feet tall. So I stand out, and I was always tall growing up. So probably pretty early on, say grade school or so.
How old were you when someone told you were smart?
Probably the 6th grade, I would say. I really remember someone telling me that I was smart. Actually, I'm sorry, 5th grade. Kathy Conway was a teacher that I had, Kelly Conway. She was my 5th grade teacher. And she really, told me that I was smart. And she was one of the first people that really told me I could be whatever I wanted to be.
What was your major challenge in school?
A major challenge in school was probably writing. I don't consider myself a fantastic writer. And I think I had some pretty harsh teachers growing up. There are some teachers that can really work to find out how to communicate with you, to help you move forward. And I had a few with writing in particular that I just developed major writer's block. Throughout college, and even to this day, sometimes I will have trouble beginning to write anything. Now, when I finish, people say it's fantastic, but in my head, it's much, much more difficult.
So you went into movement instead of writing?
I did, and anytime that I write about movement, it's quite easy. I love the human body. I'm fascinated to watch it. I love being in an airport because you get to see so many different types of people. People from all over the world, big, small, overweight, skinny, everything. And so it really gives you this example of what the body can do and what it can't do, what its limitations are.
Now that you've survived childhood, what constitutes family for you?
Well, quite literally, my family, my immediate family is my husband, Jason, and we have a daughter who's 16 months old. Her name is Lucy.
Who's very cute.
Oh, she's so adorable. She's an amazing, amazing girl. And that's my immediate family. Because we live in San Francisco and our immediate family, my immediate family is in Michigan and Atlanta and all of Canada. We've kind of nuzzled up with the three of us, and then we have a lot of direct friends that really are our family as well, that we get to share the everyday experiences of life.
Mm-hmm. What's it like to become a mother?
Amazing. I always think about this when I'm putting her to sleep, that choosing to have a child is each person's own choice, of course. But trying to really imagine what it's like, you can't until you have one. And it has been the biggest gift ever. It's completely changed my outlook on life. I've always strived to be a better person every day, but I find myself even making decisions even more, differently since having her. It's also a very tiring experience. She requires a lot of energy, a lot of patience, because kids, we tend to we want to tell them how to do things because we think it's easier. But at this age, it's all about them exploring and letting them find out what works best for them. And you need some patience for that.
So in a normal day, what do you exactly do?
Well, every day I get up and I usually most days of the week tend to do something with my own body movement-wise. I have my morning stuff with my family. And then at work, I do two things that sometimes are separate and sometimes together in terms of the muscle activation techniques and training. But I run on mostly my sessions are about an hour, and I help people try to get their functionality and live a better life. And that is done through either MAT or with the training, but it's very specific to that person's body, where a lot of training might be done on what worked best on the trainer, what worked best on a different client. I'm actually taking into consideration that person's structure, their injury history. Are they on any medications? Do they have any diseases that I need to manage as well? So I pretty much start my day. Each session is started by taking all of that into consideration and then starting the sessions.
How does that differ from a physical therapist?
A few major differences. One is physical therapy is a master's program. Actually, they're currently, I think, in the state of California making a doctorate program. So they are a licensed provider, which means that they are licensed by the state of California, by whatever state that you work in. And you have to have, in the state of California, a doctor's referral in order to work with a physical therapist. They deal with many, many different types of joint issues. So I focus on the muscular system primarily and making that function better. And for the most part, I don't take people post-op out of surgery. They really need to go to a physical therapist first. So in terms of the spectrum, physical therapists will deal with people directly out of, let's say, an ACL reconstruction surgery, a joint fusion, everything to, or just plain tendinitis, where I deal with people in the muscular issues of their muscles are not firing in sequence, so they're not able to coordinate certain movements. Certain muscles are just tight and not working, or they want to get stronger, train for a race, big spectrums like that, improve balance.
Do you have any interest in going back to school?
I'm always in school. School has never stopped for me. I finished my muscle activations, that program about 5 years ago. And that was in a pretty intensive program that took 10 months to finish. And I flew out to Denver every 5 weeks for that 10 months. And it was pretty intensive weekends where we learned the modality that I do. And since then, I have continued to go to Denver for different classes. Right now, I'm working on a completely different program that specializes in mechanics called Resistance Training Specialist. And that really focuses on when you put weight in someone's hand to do an exercise or their leg, or you're applying a force to their body, what exactly is happening at the joint level and how muscles are really working, and how do you design exercise programs for someone who might have scoliosis or no cartilage left in their knee. So I actually leave this Wednesday for Oklahoma for 5 days to do a module on the shoulder.
What's the best thing about your job?
You know, the best thing has got to be seeing someone's life change. I mean, watching a person as they start to function better, their whole life changes. To be in pain is definitely an aspect of it, but really to have them wake up and realize that they are not in pain, or that they haven't had this nagging tightness, and they can do the things that they want to do in their life. That is definitely the most rewarding part of my job.
What has surprised you the most?
The complexity of the human body. I mean, where you could look in a textbook and see, I'll give an example. There's this thing called IT band syndrome, and a lot of runners get it. But it's pain, sometimes at your hip, sometimes at your knee. And it can display the same exact pain symptoms in someone, but I could line up 10 people with the same symptoms, and the cause could be 10 different things. So it ends up being really, really complex. And just when I think I have it down, I get thrown some sort of a curveball, and, you know, the causing factor has nothing to do with their glute muscles and their hip, and has everything to do with the opposite side of their back. So it keeps me on my toes, definitely.
We'll have more with Stacey right after I remind you of the good work being done by St. Jude's. This is a great place that helps lots of children, and you can help them. Go to stjude.org, click on the donate button. It costs over $1 million a day to operate St. Jude's. Your contribution with others makes it possible to help kids who otherwise would have no hope. So please, chip in. Go to stjude.org. I also added St. Jude's to my Facebook page. After all, how could you not like St. Jude's? So, Stacey, everyone has to give themselves motivation occasionally. How do you give yourself a kick in the pants? I love challenges. And anytime someone says to me that you can't, that's enough motivation. I am truly one of those people that I will try to find a way to make something work. So if it's motivation within my profession, my clients motivate me enough. Every time someone comes into me with something that they say cannot be helped, I will do everything I can to help them. And I will research, and I will try to find for a lot of people, sometimes it's not me. That's what they need. They sometimes need a chiropractor. They sometimes need a physical therapist or an acupuncturist. So trying to get them the correct referrals. So in that sense, having someone come in with anything that seems impossible motivates me, because I really believe that the human body doesn't want to be in pain. It wants to function better. And then every time I get a little frustrated, I go out for a nice long run, and that clears me out a little bit, motivates me a little bit more, gives me clarity, start all over.
Let me turn the question around. How do you calm yourself when you have to soothe yourself?
Usually by taking a lot of deep breaths. It's something I learned at a pretty young age. And also running. I came into running a few years ago, and there is something very calming. Once you get over the hard part of running, the difficulty of managing your breathing, along with maybe aching, tired muscles, you get into a rhythm, that rhythm that people call the runner's high, where all that's happening is your breath. And so whether it's in the middle of the session and when I'm frustrated, or my daughter flinging her sweet potatoes at me, it always goes back to breath.
Is there an event in your life that has challenged you to the core?
Yes. To be completely honest, growing up, I had a difficult childhood, and most of my childhood, growing up without a father and some difficulties with my mother, she's bipolar. And growing up with a mom who's bipolar is a challenge. It's a challenge to try to manage that when you're a child.
I think they call that an understatement.
It was very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
As an adult, I've done a lot of personal work that has helped me really work on the feelings, the emotions that I had because of that. And it was one of the best decisions I ever had to go and to do that, because it's really, really hard to go about life. No one's upbringing is perfect, but it's hard to go about life when you had some difficulties. And when I'm in a profession where I help people constantly, consistently helping people. So, the first part was me helping myself.
Coming from a childhood where you couldn't help your mom, does that help lead you to a profession where you can help people? Definitely.
And so I had mentioned earlier about what got me into my profession was my mom battling her weight, and I now realize the reason why she would battle it, she would yo-yo small and big, was because of the bipolar nature.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely I strove to, and before I really realized what bipolar was or manic depression was, I realized that yes, you can help people and it works. And that is very frustrating with having anyone in your life who's bipolar. It doesn't matter if it's a sister or mother. Sometimes they don't want to change. And the biggest thing is realizing that if a person doesn't want to change, you can't make them. It comes from within. However, it's very rewarding working with people that really do want to change. In certain ways, it kind of makes up for it a little bit, I have to say.
Probably didn't have words for bipolar as a child. How did you experience her disease as a kid?
Experiencing it was a bit chaotic. There was not a lot of calm waters in our household. And my family was not near us. So my father's family really didn't stay in contact with us, and my mom's family was spread out throughout Canada. So it was very difficult.
So the only experience you knew was chaotic.
Yes. And I remember going to people's homes and their homes not being chaotic, and that was the first signal that something wasn't right at my house. and like, gee, it's rather calm. As I visited more people's homes, I quickly realized that wasn't the way to go. And my sister and I, very early on, I have an older sister. She's 4 years older than me. We were very close, and she is really the person who parented me. And her and I made a pact very early on that, yes, we realized that this was not a normal upbringing and that we didn't want to repeat it. Now, and I realize bipolar is more of a genetic condition. So if you have it, you have it. But we did not want to recreate the chaos that we grew up with.
Was your mom on drugs?
She was for a period of time, I believe, when I was young, and then went off of them. And so with most of my upbringing, she was on the manic end, which is very chaotic. You just never knew what you were going to experience. And when I was 16, everything just reached a culmination where my sister had moved out because she was of the age that she could, and things were escalating with my mother and I. And I reached a point where I reached out to my aunt and moved over to Canada with her for a few weeks in order to force my mom to get some therapy. And it worked. And she went on medication and stayed on that medication for a few years. When I moved out to California, she stopped of her own will. I mean, you can't make someone stay on it. And she was off of it again until about 3 years ago, where she had a pretty major manic episode again. And now she's medicated again.
It's a typical pattern, isn't it?
It is. Well, because I think what's hard to realize is that if you're not bipolar, waking up feeling how you do is normal. So you can't imagine someone giving you a drug to make you feel a different way. Why would you? You feel fine. And that's how a bipolar person feels. And they don't want to take their medication. They like the way that they feel.
Particularly at the manic level. Everything's working and it's going fast and you can do lots of stuff and everything's great and you're wonderful things. And
yes, until something doesn't work. And,
yes.
And then one of two things happens. Either some sort of an incident arises or something happens and they click into a depression and then nothing works.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very hard pattern to maintain.
Technically, I guess you could say that the manic level is like being on crack cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you take, the worse it gets. And so you can become really crazy.
Yes.
And then the real challenge medically is to get people back down to something that's not totally depressed.
Yes, and that's a lot of work not only from the doctor, it's also a lot of awareness from the patient. So, for example, my mom is medicated right now. However, I don't believe that the cocktail that she's on is quite correct because she's still very depressed. So it took her from a very high state, and I think a little bit too low. However, she says it's fine for her.
That is the challenge, isn't it? Finding a level that they feel good at and that everybody else agrees is okay.
Right. And again, it's I've realized how much can I do living in California.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that I've worked on with myself is that what she says is okay has to be okay with me.
Mm-hmm.
That I can't control her, even though I might want something different for her. It's her experience. As long as she's not too high or too low. It has to be somewhere in the middle. And technically she is. She's just on the lower end. But the manic, once a person's manic, you have to calm them down.
Yeah. I think people who are not familiar with the disease think that manic should be fun. But that's not the experience.
No, it's not. And, I have to say, I hadn't experienced my mom manic for probably about 15 years. So it had been a long time. She had some resonations when she would come out to visit either my sister or myself where I could tell she was a little hovering into a little bit of mania. But once a person becomes manic, it only goes higher and higher and higher. Like you said, it is like taking a drug. Mm-hmm. And so at first it might seem like it's fun. But you cannot, for example, you cannot get them to shut up. You can literally not get the person to stop talking. So that might seem like fun for the first 5 minutes. But try to spend a half an hour in a car. Mm-hmm. I could have been at a light with her and said, okay, Mom, I don't want you to talk for the rest of the duration of the red light. And she can't do it. That's not so fun anymore.
Hard to have normal conversations.
And hard to have normal conversations about anything because it's scattered. Anytime you disagree with them, it becomes an argument. And that is not, you can't argue with a manic person because you're wrong.
Mm-hmm. If you were giving a commencement address for graduation, what would be your best advice? What would you say?
The best advice that I would have is to always follow your heart and believe in yourself. I don't think that I would be where I'm at today and as happy as I am without believing in myself. That if you have some sort of a dream, and I'm talking a dream that's relatively attainable, that you can do it if you put one foot in front of the other, do the prerequisites, maybe their courses, classes, and you can achieve what you want to do. It's commitment, and it's a lot of belief in yourself.
I believe ideas are life-changing, or at least they can be. Is there an idea that has changed your life?
The idea, and it goes back to the believing in yourself. A large part of my childhood was rough, and there was a bit of verbal abuse in that. And so to be told day in and day out that you can't and that you aren't, and you can fill in the blank for whatever that would be, that's hard to come out of as an adult. I could have believed all of that, but something in myself said, nope, there's something to you, and you're worth it, and you're worth exploring the thoughts in your head and what you want to do with your life. You're worth being happy. All of that, really, really important.
Mm-hmm. A sense of I'm in charge of me.
Oh, very much so. People lose that. I think it's easy to lose. Some people feel just in doing what I do for a living, I help people, yes, physically, but I get to know them after a long period of time, and you start to realize that some people don't feel like they have control over their life. They feel work is controlling them. Some people feel like their phone is controlling them, and sometimes they're right if you don't turn it off. I mean, how freeing it is for some people to turn off their phone and have 55 minutes of me time is very empowering to someone who feels like they don't matter. Whether it's a family member, their work, something in their head, quite common.
Last question is to help me get better at this process. Think of a defining moment in your life or something that you wish that you had said or would like to say. What question should I have asked to get you to tell me that story?
Question that you should have asked. When you're talking with people who I'm doing a career that's outside of the box. It doesn't quite fit into personal training. It doesn't quite fit into physical therapy. So when you're talking with people about that, what was the moment that they decided they were going to take the left turn into something different and try to carve their own path?
So, Stacey, what was the moment that made you decide to make a left turn into something different?
I knew you were going to ask that. That moment came when originally I was in my degree. I was going to become a physical therapist, and I was finishing kinesiology as the base degree for that, and I had already started training. And because I was in a degree program, I got every client with an injury or who was pregnant. Every single client. Like, walk through the door. You got to see Stacey. She's going to school for, she'll have a degree. It became that I had a lot of injured people. And some people I would refer out, and I found some great physical therapists that I started working with. And it started happening that physical therapy wasn't working for them. Time and time again, it would help some people, but it didn't help all of them. And I was at a biomechanics workshop on resistance training. And the person, I had heard of MAT, and I asked the person to demonstrate what he did. And he did a range of motion exam on my hip, and it was unlike anything I had ever seen. That was the moment where I knew, here's something completely different that no one has ever looked at. And I happened to have a hip problem at that time, and I had been to 5 different physical therapists and 1 orthopedic surgeon, and they all told me that my hip was fine, kind of that it was in my head, even though I couldn't stand on one leg. And here's this guy, he just takes my leg, he rotates it out in a few positions, and he compared it to the other side. And no one had ever done that. And that was the moment that I decided that I was going to go into a different area, and I was going to at that point, really focus on the muscular system and what it could do. And really, I weeded out more of the weight loss people, the lifestyle situations, and really went in and focused on the muscular compensations and that focus. That was it. That was the moment.
My thanks to Stacey Earl for being my guest today. Thanks, Stacey. I appreciate your help.
Thank you. It's great.